Good morning. It is 11 o'clock here in Toronto, and I am actually really excited about today. We're going to work on why on earth anybody would bother sitting upright. So if you hate sitting on the floor, if you find it challenging for your back, I got you. If you don't like downward dog and you find it's weird, I got you. We're going to figure some stuff out today. So you need some stuff to sit on. You need a bolster or some sofa cushions, a yoga block, half dome, more cushions, folded up towel. Grab some of that stuff if you have it around, or you can just watch now and you can do this later. And a chair, something that you can lean on. Those are kind of your optimal tools for today. And you're gonna start with just sitting. We're just sit. You could start sitting on the floor. That would be a great place to start your assessment. And in fact, you can look at me. I'm pretty good, right? I'm pretty mobile. I'm pretty strong. This is my job, this movementy thing. But when I sit on the floor, if I'm just sitting, I'm not working, I'm not trying to correct, I'm not trying anything. You can see how my lower back is flexed here, right? There's kind of a roundness to my lower back. My hip bones are tucked back behind my pubic bones. So I'm not stacked in a neutral position. Am I going to explode because of that? No, this isn't about judging and putting like a good bad attachment on this. It's just about what's available to you. What do you always do? Because we want as much variety and diversity of movement as we can get. So this is where my tissues put me. This is where I'm going to sit if I'm flat on the floor, unless I deliberately kind of put tension on tension and create a working position to stack myself upright, which I can do, but you can see my knees start to pop. So there's some restrictions somewhere along this back chain that's preventing me from being able to actually hinge my hips without flexing my spine, right? Once we start to round, we're not so much doing the hinging. So today's goal is partly to figure out where can you actually be stacked up on top of your sit bones comfortably. And there's the key. You want your hip flexors and your thighs to be relaxed and easy. You want your back to be comfy and unstressed and unstrained. Your abdominal muscles unstressed and unstrained, neck and shoulders. Like everything is just kind of in its place. So this is not a bad height for me. The client I was working with the other day, who inspired today's live session, actually needed to go onto a half dome on top of the bolster. That better met the limitations of her particular very strong, very athletic body. So if you're moving along with me today, then keep shifting around and find your space. And if you're going to do this later, maybe grab a few extra things. So there's a move in the Pilates curriculum called spine stretch forward, and you can do it two different ways. And again, this is inspired by the client who was like, I don't like that exercise, I just get through it. And we realized it's because she didn't really know why we were doing it and how it then relates to a whole bunch of other exercises. So we're going to do two different versions. And the first one, you are thinking about your spine being long. You can reach your arms forward. You can anchor your feet. If you flex your heels, you'll get a little extra length here, like a little extra challenge. This is easier if your feet relax. And then you want to hinge forward at your hip joints. So what you're doing is bringing your pelvis forward in space. Your spine is just traveling along for the ride. So you don't really need to go very far. I feel lots of exciting things happening in the backs of my legs here. And then you stack back up and you reach. So I think of things like my sit bones, right? The bones at the bottom of my pelvis, traveling wide and traveling back behind me towards the wall behind me, as the top of my pelvis, my hip bones at the front, travel forward. Right, so my pelvis is moving relative to my leg bones, which are not moving. My spine is coming along for the ride. It's changing its position in space, but it's not changing its shape. We don't need to go far with this one. The other version of spine stretch forward is a curve. So your pelvis stays still and stacked this time as you bring the crown of your head forward and your neck and your shoulders and your sternum, right? Your breastplate, your collarbones. You're flexing your upper spine. Your stomach muscles are sort of holding you up from below as they flex you. But this part's not moving this time, right? It's a totally different, and you stack back up using your back muscles, kind of like we did in the prep of the back extension series that we did in last week's live. So two totally different approaches to the idea of bringing your spine forward in space. But both of them are predicated on the idea that you understand where your legs and your pelvis are. So what about all the other shapes that I showed you in the little promo picture? Does anybody have any questions about that part first? Just pop those into the comments below if you have anything that you want me to address before we move on to the chair portion of the program. No, we're good. Okay, moving on. So if you bring your hands onto the chair and you have your feet nicely planted, can you see that that's the same shape? We've just flipped it relative to gravity. So here, here there's an element of core support, right? Because I'm upright. I'm using a little bit of effort to maintain this upright position. And gravity is coming down on me across the fronts of my legs, but it's kind of columning around my upper body. When I take that same shape, now I press it here, gravity is coming down towards the floor, right? Gravity is always coming down. I'm very supported here. This is ideally quite a relaxed position. So if you double check, you could use your hand, you can use a mirror, you can use a dowel or put a half dome on your body here like this. If your butt is tucking around and your back is flexing towards the ceiling, you're not hinging. Is it a bad thing if you're not hinging? No, but it would be nice if you can hinge, right? What we're looking for is putting yourself in the position where shapes that you don't naturally and easily fall into become natural and easy. You meet your body and your tissues where they are in order to to provide yourself with excuse me to provide yourself with something new and novel. So if not high enough, keep stacking. And if you're tall, you'll have to keep stacking, right? I'm super short. I'm only 5'3". A chair's pretty good for me, but if you're 6 feet tall, a chair's gonna probably make your spine flex. And that might not be about tight hamstrings, that might just be about you're really tall. So we're doing the same thing here. We're looking for sit bones. Instead of pointing down this time, pointing back. We're looking for the same shape we had in the spine stretch forward. This is more of a release, but if you shift back until you take your weight into your heels, now you're kind of working your hamstrings to hold you up, and now this becomes, there's no support here. Gravity is still coming down. I'm still in a hip hinge, but now this is a working shape, a for sure working shape. So there's another option for hip hinging. So anybody got any questions about that? Does that make sense? The idea that one of them is a little bit more active and one of them is a little bit more passive because of the support from the chair, but it's the same shape. It's the same position. So then we step it up a little bit. And you come down onto your back. And you bring your legs towards the ceiling. So this is obviously going to vary a little bit from person to person depending on your hamstring length. If you need to bend your knees a little bit, you bend your knees. So you could go to a full tabletop. The shape won't look exactly the same if you look all the way at the shape, but if you only look as far as your knees, hey look, it's the same position again. But we're trying to respect our tissues. So it's less about get your legs to the ceiling no matter what. See how everything has changed here? My head's pulled, my back is pressed down to the floor. So we want to find the position where we can maintain this nice long line of the spine. So your ribs are easy and heavy down into the floor. You've got this little curve of your lower back. And then where can you go that you're hinging at your hips? We've changed gravity again, right? Lots of work now. This is totally a working position. You still want to be in a place where your back is comfortable, so you're not straining. You want to be in a place where your neck is not straining. So you might want to put something under your head because that makes it easier to keep your ribs planted and to maintain your hinging shape at the hips. You might be like, you know what? I'm sorry, Allison, I totally can't do that. Okay, let's make it less of a working position, right? You're still thinking about hinging. You're still thinking about this kind of precision of your leg moving in your hip socket. But if you've got lots of sort of tension spots along that back line, maybe try it as a release in this position and lift one leg. And hang it with that and feel for the drop of your leg in your hip socket. And then do the other leg. Somebody has a question. The supine hinge, does it cause the lower abs to bunch? That's such a good question. Hopefully it doesn't. But that load, right, when you're adding the weight of your legs, then yeah, you have to use your core in order to support the weight of your legs. So if what's happening when you're getting bunching, so that I'm assuming what you're meaning is that kind of there's like a pushing up of your abdominal muscles in your lower belly. So we do actually want your stomach muscles to be traveling down and low and wide. So you might want to bend your knees in order to decrease the load. If the load of your legs or the position of your legs or the relationship between your legs, your pelvis, and your stomach muscles isn't kind of working the way is best for your body at the moment, I would say change your leg position or take a little bit of load off until you feel like you can manage the base of your ribs being heavy and then your stomach muscles being low and wide. So we're trying to not build internal pressure. Sometimes that bunching is less about how your stomach muscles themselves are working, and it's more about how your system, your whole core system, is responding to the change in pressure. So we want to manage the pressure that's created by the load by doing this kind of wrapping in and around, so you're not bunching and pushing this way. So another option is to grab a strap or a belt or a scarf or a stretchy band, and you take a bit of the load off, so you still work to hold your legs in place. You're not just dropping passively into the strap, but you're using it for a little support until you feel like, aha, my stomach muscles just kicked in and they're drawing low and wide. There is no pressing and pooching up, and then you work there until eventually you can lose the strap. Does that make sense? Let me know later, play around with it, and you could always send me a message, send me a DM, and we can talk through that a little bit more. So the next position, the next shape, the next flip to gravity would be what I hesitate to call a downward dog because I'm not a yoga teacher and because I'm not going into a full down dog shape. So we can think of this more as an inverted triangle position. So if you go into a traditional downward dog where you absolutely keep your heels down on the floor, hey look, once again, that shape is not available to me. Not in a hinge, only if I flex my spine. See how I'm not hinged, right? This is round, pelvis is rounding relative to my legs, not folding. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get nice and stable in my arms. I'm going to wrap my arms, externally rotate, find a support to my shoulders, and I'm going to bend my knees until I feel like, oh, there's that moment, right? If you play around with this, you may really find, oh, there's a moment where you can settle into an easy, smooth hinge, and it doesn't feel forced or stressed. You can relax a little bit into the fronts of your hips. You're not using your quads and hip flexors to pull your legs in. They're just softly folding. And then you can play around with, okay, so there's my soft, easy, relaxed hinge. How much can I straighten my legs before I start to move something else, right? I start to move my ribs, or I start to pull into my neck, or I start to round my spine. So you just play around with, okay, here's one version of the shape, and then play, or you could do one leg at a time. But again, we've just taken the same shape, hinging at the hip, and you just keep changing it relative to gravity. Clearly, one of the big benefits for that one is you get lots of upper body work, because now you're taking the load of your upper body into your shoulders. But you've prepped for it on the chair, right? You've prepped for that position by being on loading with less weight, so that once you get into your downward dog or your inverted triangle position, you have some brain space for it. Yes, okay, cool. So does anybody have any other questions? Any other things that you wonder? Any other exercises or positions or poses where you're like, that seems suspiciously like a hip hinge? Okay. So in this private session that I was doing with a client the other day, we then followed it into, if you're a Pilates person, some of the rolling over exercises, which she loves, right? She hates the hip hinge because she didn't understand the why of it. But look, hey, I'm hinging. Now I'm going past hinge and into roll. So you can use that hinge to help. It's the starting point for a bunch of exercises that then shift into spinal flexion, so that you can have nice controlled momentum. And this finding the sense that it's not about forcing yourself into a hinge. It's not about pressing your head forward in order to get the farthest you can go. It really is about finding space in the backs of your hips, right? In the backs of your hamstrings. There's length all the way through the whole fascial chain, right? That goes from your feet right through to your eyebrows, right? All the way over your head. So if you find these shapes really challenging, sometimes it's really helpful to go somewhere else, right? Do some work on your feet, do some work on your calves, roll out do some rolling on your lower back, do some flexion and extension of your upper spine. Weirdly, you could go in and start moving the skin around on your scalp, right? And all the way over to your eyebrows, so that you're moving that upper part of the fascial line that goes all through the back. All of those things can affect how easily you can hinge. So I think that's what I have to say about hinging today, because we've been here for 20 minutes, I think, already, almost. Let me know if you have any questions. Pop them into the comments down below. If you're a movement teacher and you're interested in this kind of detail and cueing and being able to convey this stuff to your clients, I have a free download. I'll include the link to that below in the comments, and I'll post this live later. Mwah! It was lovely to have you with me today, and I'll see you next Thursday at 11.